just go to mostateparks.com, and there is a survey right there. But we'll reference that a few times this evening, but it's important that everybody tell the governor what they think about this project, because we think it's critical for economic development for our state, and that it's an important part of or it can be an important part of recreation and transportation and economic development. I wanted to make sure in the very beginning to give an opportunity to Warren Wood of Ameren, the vice president at Ameren, who's taken time to come to Barnett to tell us about what they want to accomplish with this project. And I want to say they are donating this 144 miles to the state of Missouri. So that's a big deal. No matter where you are, I think you can see this red line goes most of the way across Missouri. And so it is a big deal that Ameren is donating this to the state of Missouri to benefit its citizens. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Warren Wood. Thank you.
It's going to take a lot of money to put it back into operating state. We started wondering what to do with that property, and Missouri Rock Island Trail Association said, well, there's a tremendous interest in building a bike trail and connecting it to Katy and really have a world-class destination. We said, well, how much support do you have? I mean, really? And said, well, why don't we come by and drop by a few boxes of letters? And we had a little meeting at our headquarters in St. Louis, and they dropped off 5,000 letters. These are from people who live along the trail, bike drivers around the United States, and even some international letters. We said, yep, that's a lot of support. So let's see if there's a way to make this happen. We started talking to DNR. They expressed an interest in, not only we need to get the steel up, but they also asked, could you get the ties out of the way? Because the ties it's a big hindrance to actually making the project happen. We agreed to get the ties pulled up as well. They are now in the final phases of steel removal and tie removal. Expect that to end, about the end of this year, if not very early next year, at which point, under our notice of interim trail use, we'd end up being able to hopefully provide that over to the Department of Natural Resources. Now, there has been a change in administration, and absolutely appropriately, state government's looking at this and saying, what sort of liabilities are we picking up? What sort of economic development opportunities and costs does it come with? And to the state of Missouri, do the people that live along this and other people interested in taking advantage of this opportunity want to see this trail potentially developed? And that's the first step on DNR, taking the property or not. And so the survey that Greg mentioned, it is important. If people have a view that this is something that the state of Missouri should move ahead with, they should go to that survey and note that interest. Because this is probably one of the crossroads on if it ends up going over to DNR or if there's some other path for that trail. Thank you again for coming tonight. Look forward to hearing the comments and the presentation. And I thank Greg for all the work to keep this project going.
One of the things that I've seen, I was involved in helping a little bit with the Katy Trail back 30 years ago. These are complex issues. There are legal issues, and so our next speaker is going to be talking about that. By the way, we do have a lot of people here tonight that are really interested in horseback riding. And so I wanted to mention before I forget anything else, before I say anything else, that the first 47 miles of the Rock Island Trail allows horses as well as hikers and bicyclists. And so far there's seemed to have been little or no conflict, or at least nothing of significance. And so I've tried to, I've looked hard for problems to see if there's a problem there that we need to be addressing, and there doesn't seem to be. And so I would mention that to you as you think about your public comment to the Department of Natural Resources, State Parks, to the governor, at mostateparks.com, that you might say what you think about that as well. So with us though tonight, we have someone from the Arendt Fox law firm that is working on the Tucker filings for those people who own property underneath the railroad easement, and she will tell us all about that. And I kind of want to get that out of the way in the beginning because that's an important thing to understand.
Right. How many people own land that is affected by the rail trail, meaning that this will go through it? Okay, so a good amount. So as Greg said, I represent several landowners, about 500 landowners in Missouri on the Rock Island Trail. whose property the trail will run through and over. And our case, just to be clear, our case is not against the Rock Island Trail, it's not against MORIT, it's not against Ameren, it's not against the MDNR, state parks, or the state of Missouri. It is simply a case against the federal government for compensation for the property. The case will not help or hinder the trail. It is unrelated to the furtherance of the trail. So if you're for the trail or you're really against the trail, the success of our case is not going to have any effect on the outcome of whether this trail gets developed and whether MDNR accepts it. What our case is about is 100 years ago, at the turn of last century, when the railroad was originally created, it was created in a variety of ways. It was condemned under Missouri's condemnation statutes. It was mostly granted from private landowners to the railroad. And so I've gone through those hundreds and hundreds of railroad deeds, and some of them only granted the railroad an easement for railroad purposes. And what that means under Missouri law is that once the railroad stopped using that easement for its purpose, which was to run a railroad, the easement extinguished and the underlying landowners would get their property back. As support for this, as I went through my 500 clients' deeds to their property now, many of those deeds explicitly state that they own to the center line of the railroad. So this is something that's been understood for over 100 years. When it stopped being a railroad, the property would go back to their full use and enjoyment. What has happened is the federal government, through its rail banking program, has issued a need to, which Warren mentioned. It was an order issued in February 2015. What that order did was say that the railroad could instead sell this for a public park. And that's in fact what I think is in the process of happening, possibly in this case. In doing so, what it did was wiped out Missouri law, said all of those deeds that you have that say you own to the center line, and all of those 100-year-old deeds that say the railroad only had an easement, we're going to wipe those out. We, the federal government, are going to say, no, you can sell this easement for a public park in perpetuity, forever. A case went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court in 1990, and the U.S. Supreme Court upheld this law. They call it rail banking law, loosely, and said what it is eminent domain. It's the federal government taking private property for a public purpose. They said it's absolutely constitutional, but there is a constitutional remedy, which is the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution that says, nor shall private property be taken for a public purpose without just compensation. So the U.S. Supreme Court has said your remedy is to be paid the fair market value for that property. So the landowners who are in this case, who are successful, they're not going to get a windfall. They're going to get what the fair market value is for the property that's taken, the per acre value and any damages to their property that remains as a result of this trail being converted to a public park. And just lastly, is one last point, we drove through, and I drove through the tail end of the trail. I got rerouted around some stoppage on 52. And I think a lot of you are familiar. This is very overgrown. It's not an active railroad. And there's about 12 to 15 feet, really, that are taken up right now for the right-of-way. The right-of-way in this case is generally 100 to 200 feet wide. So, I would, just so you know, for any property owners that are concerned about this is 100 feet out of the middle or the side of their property. It's a bigger piece than I think most people recognize. And I just wanted to point that out. But with that being said, I think that's all I have to say right now. I just really want to stress that our lawsuit is not against anyone in this room. It is against the federal government. And, again, our lawsuit should not hinder any efforts to develop this trail. It won't hurt the trail. It won't necessarily help it either. It is a completely separate issue.
Like Greg said, we have been on the Katy Trail for 25 years, and that 25 years have been great. We've seen a lot of cyclists come through Windsor. We're 20 miles from one end. They've stopped, they've stayed some, they've stopped at Casey's, and they take their pictures at the trailhead. And we have seen a lot of activity through Windsor with the Katy Trail. But this, with us being 47 miles from one end, is very different for us. And I think that even before, with the Katy, we could have made it whatever we wanted it to be. So I would encourage all of you in your towns, whether it's here or any of the other small towns, Just do something. Set up a lemonade stand, have a general store. I have seen on Facebook where the lady in Chilhowie in this general store, I keep seeing people, we rode from Kansas City and we went down to Chilhowie and we had lunch and we went back. And boy, that was fun, and they can't wait to, and they're gonna build up and then they're gonna come to Windsor after that. But there's two things that I'm seeing that all of the cyclists, they're just looking for hospitality and recreation. They want to have fun riding their bikes, whether they've been on a bike recently or not. Some of them get a ways onto the trail and realize they maybe weren't ready for this. So Chilhowie might be getting more business that way than otherwise. Sometimes I've become the shuttle also out of Windsor. So I do wear a few different hats in Windsor. I'm the city administrator for the last 3 years. I have Kim's Cabins, which was a cabin. For 2 summers I've rented 1 cabin, and with the Rock Island being open last December, I just this winter called Amish guy over, and he came and looked at the cabin, the one existing cabin, and I said I want 2 more. And I've been filling those 3 cabins, not just with cyclists, but because they're there. Just driving in here this evening, it was like, oh, that's cute. Oh, that's cute. Oh, that could be, even just a house can be through a website called Airbnb. You can rent just a room in your house. So it's whatever you make of it. And on top of that, then I'm also, another hat I wear, like Greg mentioned, is a cowboy hat sometimes. So I appreciate that in Windsor we're not only the crossroads, because the Katy Trail comes from St. Charles, and we are literally the turn now for them to go up to Kansas City. So and we are smack dab in the middle of the equestrian section of the main equestrian section of the Katy Trail. So between Sedalia, then through Windsor, and to Clinton is the equestrian section. And so now the entire 47.5 miles up to Pleasant Hill is also backcountry horseman, huh? Awesome. So we're thrilled to be that. In Windsor, we have seen, so my 3 cabins are 8 now, motel rooms, booming. I mean, we are seeing, and I only think, the owner of our little motel, and now 2 rooms for rent at Fitzgerald's, rooms for rent, big old house, and she just redid the downstairs. And we're all kind of deer in the headlights going, what could this be next year? You know, so I see those same things for you all. If you want it, if you want to do something for that. Our community, it's not just the city. It's not me as city administrator or city council. It's a group effort. It's our city government, it's our Chamber of Commerce, it's our organizations. Our American Legion has just said people need something to do when they come to Windsor. We don't have a whole lot of things to do. We have a bowling alley. We have a family that just started escape rooms, that you find these in big cities. I have guests coming to the cabins going, do you really have escape rooms in Windsor? Because it's not something you find in a small town, but a very innovative family named this the Katy Rock Escape Room. So there's something to do in Windsor there. But our American Legion just made their own miniature golf course. So, you know, anything like that. Our park, I can't forget our park. We have a beautiful park in Windsor. It is actually, so the New Rock Island section of the Katy Trail comes from Pleasant Hill, and there are 3 trailheads at Medford, Chilhowie, Leeton, and then Windsor. But if you don't know to keep going, there's another, I don't know, mile maybe. And it ends at the back of our beautiful park with a lake. And so at the park, we also have a campground. We have a shower house. We have a shelter house. We have quite a few shelter houses in the park. So all of those things, just for example, what we've seen with the Rock Island opening, normally in a summer, we would maybe have 2 scout groups come, 15 to 20 kids. We've already had, this is July, 1st of July, we've already had 7 good-sized scout groups come and camp in whatever weather. I remember some of them had to go into the shelter house because through storms. But people are coming. Our park itself, we've had 6 RV slots, and we finished 2 more completely, so we have 8. What else, Craig? Restaurants. So we have new restaurants starting. We have had some different restaurants in Windsor. We have the restaurants when people come into my cabins in the evening, night before last. 7 cyclists coming in on the Rock Island, and the first thing they say, where are we going to eat tonight? So they come hungry, they come thirsty, they come wanting a hot shower. They just want somebody to take care of them while they're there. Whenever you go on vacation, you're going to spend some money. You're going to want to be taken care of, and that's all they want. This is their vacation. They've spent money on these bikes, and it's whatever you want it to be. We have a new Mexican restaurant, and they are seeing lots and lots of business. Breakfast. Cyclists love their big breakfast before they take off again at 6:30 or 7 in the morning. Do y'all have any questions for a town that's been there? Yes, sir.
What's population, Windsor?
Population Windsor is 2,900.
So about the size of our sales.
Is it? Okay. 2,900. And we are in the cross section of a couple of highways too, 2-lane highways. So we're kind of on the way to Truman Lake, and so we have that, but kind of like 52 going through. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you for having me.